everybody. It's Dave here, Darren over there. We're your two old bloggers. Been talking to Minnesota Vikings publicly for over 2 decades apiece, writing and commenting. It's been a fun time so far. Has it been extremely fulfilling, as in we get to carry home the Lombardi? Well, not quite yet, unfortunately. But I want to welcome everybody that's here. We have the Drewster. We have SKOL Vikings. Let's go. And we have Peter. Welcome to the show. Today we have 3 themes as back to normal. First one is the Vikings are facing a quarterback's murder row in 2025. What do we mean by that? We mean there's a high level of quality in the opposing quarterbacks we play. And you hear me on every game preview that 80% of the wins go to the better quarterback. Well, we'll look at those quarterbacks this year and see where the Vikings might actually fit in. And then we're going to get into this week in Vikings land. Well, we're going to talk a few things, some about the Super Bowl, and some lessons we may have learned from it. Following that, we're going to dive into our tight ends. That's right. Both of them. And see how we can fix everything. With that, all next on Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock. Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your 2 old bloggers. And we're back. Now, first off, Darren, why are we early? For weeks now, we've been hyping we're moving to Sunday. And no, we're on Saturday and not at our regular time. We're an hour early. Why is that?
Oh, yeah. Well, you can blame it all on me, folks. Blame it all on me. Little vacay going to Mexico tomorrow, but flying out to Calgary today. And going to be gone to Mexico, Puerto Vallarta on the Pacific coast for 7 days. Wife, myself, and picking up our daughter along the way. So hopefully when I come back, this pale face will be a little darker.
Get some sun, have some fun. Get all charged up heading into free agency. Is that it?
That's it. And, well, there's no shortage of sun right now in Yellowknife, Dave. It's just that it's minus 50 with the wind chill the past week. So I can't go around in shorts and a T-shirt, unfortunately, or definitely not bare-chested. Skin will be frostbite in a matter of minutes.
Oh, yes. Within seconds, generally, at that temperature. So, hey, it is what it is. All right, today we're going to start off the show with the 2025 QB Gauntlet, Theme 1. See, I got it working.
You do? I was going to say, technical difficulty solved.
Yes, it is. All right.
And Nick was asking how we were doing, and I'm doing just great, Nick. Hopefully you're doing well too, and everybody else out there. Thanks for joining us. But yes, Theme 1, the quarterback gauntlet. And when the Vikings lost to the Detroit Lions, Dave, on that terrible season finale, we knew then who the Vikings opponents were going to be. That was cleared up. And when we got that, I remember, Dave, you and I are talking about on the show, I think, saying, geez, that's a pretty tough looking schedule, tougher than 2024 was. And one of the reasons why it was tough was we thought because of the quarterbacks that we were going to be facing, the Vikings were going to be facing during that time. And Dave, you sent me this week So we talked about that, kind of forgot about it a bit, I guess. But then you sent me the list yesterday of the quarterbacks that the Vikings face, both home and away. And I was like, damn, that is a real murderer's row of quarterbacks that the Vikings are facing. And when you look at it, it's a tough list, almost you could say a scary list that the Vikings have got there. And it's going to make it really tough for the Vikings you're just coming off a 14-3 season. The list of quarterbacks that we are facing is going to make it really tough for the Vikings to, get to a 10-11 wins, I think, even with their roster being strong as it is right now. And we expect them to build on that strong roster in the offseason and the draft. You look at it, Brian Flores' defenses are going to be facing some tough quarterbacks next season in 2025. And particularly at home, if you've got tickets to any of the Vikings games once the schedule comes out, Dave, you are going to be seeing some bitchin' quarterbacks the Vikings are going to be faced. You've got the list up there. You got, Lamar Jackson, who probably should have been the NFL MVP this year. You got him coming to the bank. You've got Joe Burrow, who threw for 16,000 yards last season with the Bengals, coming to the bank.
Yeah,
Jalen Hurts,
the Bengals alive last year.
Yes. Did he ever with his play? Bounce back from the wrist injuries of last season. You got Jaden Daniels, who's coming off, I think, and a lot of people think, the best season a rookie quarterback has ever had in the NFL's history, coming to the bank. Then you've also got the Super Bowl MVP, Jalen Hurts, is going to be there. Jared Goff, who has been an absolute Vikings killer since he moved to Detroit. We know we get him. You also get Caleb Williams with the Bears, go ahead, Jordan Love, who might not be an elite quarterback, but when he's on, he is very, very tough. And we have seen some quarters and halves where he's shown that against the Vikings. Caleb Williams last year, uneven rookie season, but he'll be going into a second year. He's now got a new head coach, another Vikings nemesis, Detroit offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, who's now the Bears head coach. And then the other guy that they've got is Michael Penix, who looked pretty was solid in a late season addition as the Falcons starting quarterback after the Falcons decided to replace bench Kirk O'Chains and replace him with Michael Penix. So that's a real tough gauntlet of quarterbacks that the Vikings are facing there at home. And the Vikings went 7-1 at home last year. Going to be tough for them to repeat that with that slate of quarterbacks that you're facing. Now, on the road, it's not quite as fearsome, but we're still facing some pretty good quarterbacks there too. Just looking at, you got Justin Herbert with the Chargers, who's damn good. We know that we get Goff, Williams, and Love as well on the road, the divisional rivals. But yeah, Herbert is damn good. Dak Prescott is damn good, at least in the regular season. Geno Smith
stay healthy. Yes,
that's right. Yeah, Geno Smith is a solid quarterback who is capable of having some big games when he's on and really rolling. Fortunately, he wasn't super on and rolling when the Vikings faced him last year, but we get to see him again. And then you've got, you've got a couple of questionable ones. You got the Giants, who are probably going to be a train wreck next year, and are they going to have, and we don't know who they're going to have at quarterback, but it's either going to be a rookie who's going to be learning the ropes, and we know that the quarterback, the draft class at quarterback is not that strong this year, or they're going to have a retread vet. So Vikings will be, I think, pretty good there. But then you've got Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Their quarterback situations are up in the air, but potentially for all these three, might we be seeing Sam Darnold facing the Vikings, either in Cleveland and Pittsburgh, maybe with the Giants? I doubt he'd go there, but it could happen. And then maybe even Daniel Jones could end up in Cleveland or Pittsburgh. Obviously, he's not going to be with the Giants. He just left that situation. But even, again, the away games, the Vikings don't face as daunting quarterbacks as they do at home, but still overall, when you take it in totality, it's pretty tough that they're facing. And a couple of final points that I wanted to mention about those quarterbacks that the Vikings face. One is that this year, we've talked about, and a lot of the focus and chatter amongst the media is how the Vikings have to fix the interior offensive line to, take another step next year and challenge for that Super Bowl and get to where the Philadelphia Eagles have got to this year. And rightly so, that needs to be a focus. But looking at those quarterbacks again, that Brian Flores' defense is going to face, our front office is going to really have to also focus on and find in free agency and in the draft. They've got to find some impact players there to add to the defensive talent, because we're going to need to continue to have a very strong, very good defense to stop those quarterbacks. So you're going to need some impact free agents you're bringing in, either re-signing some of our own free agents and also bringing in some ones we didn't have last year. And I think you've got to land on, find one or two rookies in this draft that on defense that also make a positive impact on the defense. And we haven't seen that much in the past 2-3 years. So
Drewster was doing some research on the interior defensive line today, and we were chatting a bit about that. I can't wait till his analysis comes out. But he agrees.
And, the second thing that this looking at the slate of quarterbacks we're facing, the thing I want to mention is that I think we're going to learn, assuming that J.J. McCarthy is the Vikings starting quarterback, and I think he will be in 2025, we're going to learn, I think, a lot about how good J.J. McCarthy is in 2025 because of the quarterbacks he's facing. He's going to have to go toe-to-toe with Jaden Daniels and keep up with them, and Jalen Hurts and Jared Goff and Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, because the Vikings are going to have to score points to beat those teams. So he's going to have to, keep up with them, and in some cases outplay those guys. And those are tough guys to outplay. The second thing is a lot of those teams, Green Bay, Detroit, Philly, Baltimore, had very, very good defenses last year as well, and likely will have very good defenses in 2025. So again, if he's able to, he's going to have to put up points against some tough defenses and sometimes outscore the other offense. And if he can do that against that slate of defenses, I think, we're going to feel very, very good about J.J. McCarthy being the franchise guy that we hope he will be. And so, with finally, finalizing with that, I just feel that, that I'm really excited to see, get to this and see where JJ McCarthy goes facing this kind of schedule. And, it almost makes me wish that it was September already.
Oh yeah. But we got to go through the summer first, and we got to build up the hope. But yes, I want to see JJ McCarthy back under center once again, throwing the football and seeing how it looks, without a doubt. But looking at all those quarterbacks that we play, it's getting 14 wins this year is probably very unrealistic. But could we get 10 or 11? I think so. Luckily, now, what you didn't point out, the home games seem to be the toughest.
Yes.
For high-quality QBs. But the silver lining is they're at home, where the crowd can help mess things up on the end to mess with those quarterbacks as well, which is always a good thing. And then the road, we got the 3 TBD teams, which should help. I think one of those will be overseas. I'm suspecting the Steelers game. And we might have a chance if that home crowd can just, crank it up, get in everybody's head. There's enough possibility. But I think now you got to remember, this is the same schedule minus 2 games for every single team in the division. And each division team plays, virtually the same quarterbacks. So I don't think the division is going to rocket like it did last year, where you had 3 teams with double-digit leads going into the playoffs. But it's still going to be tough on everybody to win both opponent and our division. So it's going to be an interesting season, and I can't wait, like you, for it to get here. And just think, we're only, a week out from the Super Bowl?
Yep.
And we're already clamoring for 2025.
Yeah. Nick didn't think too much of me saying that Dak's damn good, but I don't know. He seems to play pretty well against the Vikings.
When he's healthy, he plays well. So
yeah. And Big Rail Dad's asking about if JJ's the guy, why so much talk about Darren coming back? Well, I think that a lot of the talk is coming from the NFL media reporters that follow the NFL. And I don't know where they're getting their information. I think a lot of it is speculation, not based on things that they're actually hearing from people from the Vikings front office. And we know the Vikings front office has been tried to be as muddy and murky on this question as possible. We love Sam, we love JJ, we love everybody. Everything's a possibility. So.
Well, and KOC said, hey, if I could bring everybody back and then add more people, I would.
Yeah.
And I think he feels that way. And why wouldn't he? I mean, it'd be great. But
yep.
Well, that brings us to theme 2. This week in Vikings land.
Got a few topics to get to this week, Dave. And the first one is just looking at the Super Bowl. Philadelphia Eagles won it. I wasn't surprised that the Eagles won the Super Bowl because I think the Chiefs were favored by 1.5 or something like that. It was pretty evenly matched by Vegas going in. But I wasn't surprised that the Eagles won this. I was surprised by how decisive they won the game by. And
a beat down, you can say it.
Yes, ass whooping, whatever you want to call it. And so with the Eagles, even if they hadn't won decisively, but now that they did win so decisively, and we saw how much issues the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line, which we thought was pretty good, and Patrick Mahomes, who's a wizard at getting away from pressure, how much trouble they had with the Phillies in defensive line, particularly the interior. But the offensive line of Philly played really well too. But tush push and all of that sort of stuff. But with the Philly doing what they did to Kansas City and doing what they did to a lot of teams all year, well, the NFL being the follow the leader copycat league that it is, everybody is now going to likely follow this blueprint that the Eagles used. And the blueprint being on the offensive line, get a bunch of 6'6", 6'7", 350, 360 pound behemoths with a little bit of some athletic ability, put them on the offensive line. And on the defensive line, find some explosive guys, particularly on the interior, that big, explosive, that can create disruption, create penetration, get after the quarterback, particularly up the middle, and load up on those guys on your roster, and then wait to hold your own Super Bowl party. And and so the problem with that is that when a lot of teams, or almost every team, is following that blueprint, well, it's going to be hard for them to accomplish that because everybody's kind of looking for similar players. And, and some of these guys that might have slipped under the radar in past years on the interior offensive line or the interior defensive line are not going to slip under the radar. So it's going to be tougher to get the player, the quantity of players you need to achieve that blueprint. And also it'd probably take you 3 or 4 years to do it. So what this made me think of is that, the Vikings, it's pretty clear that they're going to look to particularly improve the interior offensive line. But what if they leaned on some other aspects of the roster where they already have really good talent and try to go another route to getting to the Super Bowl and winning it? I don't know what would be, I don't know what would decisively work in that area, but look at wide receiver. We've already got Justin Jefferson. We've already got Jordan Addison. You've got prime pass catching tight end in TJ Hockenson? What if you added another big time wide receiver to that group? And also you draft a home run hitting, big play running back in the draft along with it. And then you just outscore everybody. How about that? Or on the defensive side of things, Brian Flores, we know we got a pretty strong edge rushing room right now. It maybe add a little bit of that in free agency, but also in free agency and the draft, go after as many good corners as you can. And then you've got pass rushing on the edge, but also lock down, hopefully, corners to lock down the wide receivers. Okay, maybe you give up on the interior and you don't have quite the robust or the elite talent there, but work on pass rush and having a bunch of really good corners that can be sticky in coverage and man coverage and don't allow a lot of space for wide receivers. See how that works. That might be quicker for the Vikings to accomplish than trying to go and replicate what the Eagles have done.
What you're saying is zag when everybody else is zigging.
Yes, I think that's what it is. And again, the Vikings already have the Vikings on the offensive line. We like their tackles, but you've got 3 interior guys you probably wish you could upgrade from. Well, that's a lot of guys to upgrade and improve on in 1 or 2 seasons. Whereas the Vikings already have a lot of strength at wide receiver, at least in the top part of the depth chart. You add one more guy, like Matthew Collar was talking this week about how the Vikings didn't have this year a real strong yards after the catch wide receiver. I think Justin Jefferson was the top amongst them. He was 18th in the league in yards after the catch. He talked about if they could add somebody who was really good at that would make the wide receiver room, the passing game, even stronger than it already was, and gives them another dimension that they didn't have last year. And that could take the offense to a whole nother level. You're scoring 3 to 7 extra points per game. By that can lead to a lot more wins than if you stick with doing what you're doing now. So again, I don't have a definitive answer on if this would work, but again, if everybody's trying to do things one way and you've got a long way to go to that one way yourself, but you've got strengths in other areas that also could lead to wins and success, maybe lean in on that and you'll be able to get players that are undervalued at those positions as opposed to going after players that everybody is trying to go after.
I agree. And you've heard me complain about the lack of quality O-line and quality D-line players in the league, and that I wish there was more. Now throw another constraint that they got to be 6'6" and weigh 350. It's impossible to find. You're not going to get 32 teams worth of that are athletic. It's just they aren't produced. Now, I wish they were. It'd be great. We'd return to the golden age of football, like back in the 90s when we ran the ball all the time and everything was power. But we don't have those guys. And even back then, everybody was smaller.
Yes.
It took a lot of forethought to put together a team like this. Now, and then what do you do in the meantime while you're looking for those players? You just can't not play. You've got to literally field a team, and you want to maximize the ability to win. What is it that Kwesi always says? Competitive rebuild. So that we are keeping competitive. If that means taking a 6'1" guard instead of a 6'6" guard, you might just have to do it. If it means taking a nose tackle that weighs 290 on the light end but is fast and can push versus a 370-pounder that sits in the middle and can't get any pass rush, well, you might just have to do that. So with the limited amount of resources, you've got to be able to maximize it. And the fact that when the whole league is zigging and you want to zag, that sometimes helps. And remember, Dennis Green did it. He changed his offense because everybody was running the West Coast when he came and became our coach. and he said the first most important deal is to win the division. And so he switched up to an Air Coryell offense and won the division. He zagged when everybody else was zigging.
Mm-hmm. The thing about doing these things, Dave, is that sure, it's a gamble to again zig when other people's are zagging, but it's a gamble to try to go to be zagging with everybody else's zag, right? There's no guarantee anything will work, and gambles that when you lose those gambles, the front office people, coaches, and or general managers and the coaches tend to get fired when those gambles don't work out. But just something I was thinking about. I don't know if we'll see the Vikings do what I'm ruminating on, but just again, something I was thinking about. And sometimes you gotta, think outside the box, right? Look for a different way to be successful and get a Lombardi trophy, because again, the competition for interior defensive linemen and interior offensive linemen and free agency in the draft this year is going to be intense.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. And Drew says he does both zig and zag, and I used to do zigzags too.
Zigzag papers.
Now, that brings us to the next element that I teased, that the GM of the Eagles took a while to build that team.
He did. A little bit Philly-centric there. You're looking at Howie Roseman, of course, and right now he's being hailed as the genius of the NFL. And when you have the kind of year he had in the draft and free agency, capped off by his team that he put together winning the Super Bowl, he's deserving of the applause and the kudos that he's getting. But it did, again, another thing that it made me think about our own general manager, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. I think he's done a pretty good job in the 3 years that he has been with the Vikings. Yes, the drafts have not been very good, but he's put together teams that have had 13 wins and won the divisional title in 2022 and had 14 wins this year and got to the playoffs again in 2024. But despite that, you've got some fans, a lot of fans, who wish he had been fired months ago. And I think that the Howie Roseman situation is instructive to the Vikings and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, and maybe to those fans too, because look at Howie Roseman's career. He started off with the Eagles in 2000 as an intern. He didn't become the general manager until 2010, but he didn't always have for a lot of those years. He wasn't in control of the player personnel. Andy Reid and Chip Kelly were, but. If you look at from 2010 to 2016, his first 7 seasons, the Eagles were good but not great. They only went to the playoffs twice. They had 2 10-win seasons to get to the playoffs. In 4 other seasons, they went 8-8 or less. 1 year they had a 4-win season. So again, they were good, not great. And yet Jeff Lurie, through those 7 seasons, he showed patience. The Eagles owner, Jeff Lurie, showed patience in Howie Roseman, and he kept him on there and actually gave him more responsibility and control over player personnel later on. Well, since 2017, what have the Eagles done with Howie Roseman as the general manager and in control of putting together the team? Well, they've been to the playoffs in 7 of the 8 seasons since then. They've won 2 Super Bowls. They've gone to 3. The patience Jeff Lurie showed in Howie Roseman has paid off in a big way. And so that's why I don't get the calls by some fans to fire Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. There'll come a time where if he doesn't get the Vikings to a Super Bowl and win it, that we will be calling for his head. But at this point right now, after 3 seasons, I think the franchise is in better shape now than it was when Rick Spielman got fired at the end of the 2022 offseason. And I think that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah deserves more rope to see where he can take this franchise. His plan for building the roster is just starting to now to, I think, mature. And so, yeah, I think the Howie Roseman situation, again, is instructive to Vikings fans who want to get rid of our general manager.
I agree. And we don't want to end up like the Jacksonville or the Vegas.
Yeah, and when you're switching out your general managers and head coaches on the regular every 2-3 seasons or less, that's how you become the Jaguars and the Raiders.
And finish with 4 wins.
Yeah, or sometimes less.
Somewhere, yeah. Hey, it is what it is. I want to give Kwesi, more chances. I think he's getting better at the draft. He's obviously excelled at free agency.
Yes.
This last year's free agent class is by far the best I've ever seen in my life. So
it was hard to complain about it. And there was an article that got referenced. I believe it was, I can't remember what it was, but they did a study on drafting by general managers and showed that it kind of, there's peaks and valleys to it. Like general managers can, and Howie Roseman has done it too. Somebody mentioned the Jalen Reagor, Justin Jefferson decision by him, but he's had entire drafts that have not gone very well in his time as general manager. Now, he's been general manager. Yeah, he's been general manager a long time, but that does happen. As much as we want the front office to nail every draft pick and nail every draft, history shows that every general manager blows a draft or two. Unfortunately for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, it seems like his first 2 are going to be busts for the most part, and so there's a lot of focus on that. Now, 2024 and 2025 and beyond, we'll see. If he consistently drafts poorly, the Vikings are going to be in trouble in a franchise, and he won't be employed by the Vikings anymore. But I think it's too early to say if that's going to be one of the hallmarks of his time as a general manager here.
Mm-hmm. So we will see. Free agency's coming up. We'll see what he does there, and then we'll roll into the draft.
We will. Sticking with Kwesi, though, and it was about 4 weeks ago that Kevin O'Connell got his big fat extension. We still don't know the terms, but we hear it's pretty lucrative for him. That was 4 weeks ago. And at that point in time, I thought that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's extension was going to be on the heels of that, was going to happen very quickly. Well, he still doesn't have one.
That's what was reported.
He still doesn't have one, which makes me wonder why. It's not something I think to be in panic mode right now, but you do think, Dave, I don't know, I think anyway, that the Wilfs would like to get, I don't know what the holdup is or if there is a holdup, but I think that maybe they're waiting for the Super Bowl to end before they announced it, because at least to create something for the news cycle. But I think they want to get this settled pretty soon, before the combine at least, because at that point in time, the longer this goes on, Dave, the more questions the Vikings are going to get asked about it, whether it's Kevin O'Connell, the Wilfs, if they make themselves available to the public and to the media. And then Kwesi Adofo-Mensah always goes to the podium at the combine, as a lot of general managers do. And if he does that at that point in time and he does not have his extension, he's going to get as much questions about that as he is about who the Vikings are going to draft and what their strategy is for the draft. And I think the Vikings would rather keep the focus on the 2025 season and how they're going to make the team better and get to the Super Bowl than have it be almost as much about Kwesi Adofo-Mensah does not have a contract extension yet, and what is his future with the team and what the hell is going on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I suspect it may be done already, and we just haven't heard, and they were holding off on putting it out because they didn't want to interfere with Super Bowl week, because that would have been in bad taste for the NFL. We may hear it as early as this week. We may hear it in the run-up to free agency. We may hear it at the, prior or just the beginning of the combine, but we'll see. I doubt there's any real sticking points out there, but who knows?
Yeah, well, when O'Connell got his extension, I talked about Kevin Seifert writing a story where he said that O'Connell did not get any more say in personnel matters with this new deal. So yeah, if personnel issues and how much control Kwesi has over that was an issue. It doesn't sound like it should be, because O'Connell doesn't have more the say in the personnel matters right now, and he got a big fat extension. So yeah, there may not be any holdup. It's just one of the things that the timing, they might be looking for the right time to do it. But again, the longer it goes on, the longer it becomes a question of, well, are you or are you not going to do it? And if you're not going to do it, how come you're not doing it?
Mm-hmm. So we have some key dates coming up.
Yes, we do. You got them all up there. Dave, you sent this to me earlier in the week and thought, everybody that watches us, and thank you for doing so, you need to memorize these dates because they're all very important dates on the NFL calendar, free agency, the draft, OTAs, all that sort of stuff. But, I think that the key dates for me, and the ones that is going to be the key, and somebody referenced it about Sam's deal will tell a lot. I think that February 18th to the March 4th window is the one I'm really looking at now, because that is when the franchise and transition tag window opens and closes. And at that point, we're going to learn, it's going to be a lot clearer what the Vikings are doing at quarterback, because at that point, either the Vikings have not signed Sam Darnold to an extension. They can do that now. They will, or they have not slapped the franchise or transition tag on them, which means he's probably being allowed to go into free agency, where he will certainly sign with another team for a large amount of money. Or if they do slap the franchise or transition tag on him, then that means that the Vikings are likely going to be trading him to another team, in which case we will recoup some much needed assets in the draft, likely, and maybe even a player in that deal, which is very good. Either way, we'll get a lot more clarity during that period on the Vikings quarterback situation, whether it's 2025 is looking like J.J. McCarthy or bust, or it's something else.
Well, we're going to find out, but you've got one little bit. You're talking about the 18th. Monday, the 17th, is the deadline for Sam Darnold, Aaron Jones, Stephon Gilmore, and Byron Murphy to either negotiate to have their contract void date moved out.
Mm-hmm.
What happened with Kirk Cousins last year. If it's not by 3:00 tomorrow Central, or Monday Central, they're free agents. That's it. And we could say, well, the 18th is the day they can tag them. Well, not if they're not on the team. So that has to happen. So I would suspect either over the remainder of the weekend or Monday that we'll hear, yes, Sam Darnold's people said, yeah, and they moved it out to March 4th or whatever the date it is. But we'll see. So I suspect, keep your eyes on the feeds, because there's going to be news in the next 48 hours or so concerning all of that.
Drew's saying he thinks Jones has already pushed that date back. I don't remember seeing anything about that, but
I haven't either, but it's possible.
But
I mean, these guys put that date in there for a reason. Now, most of them get pushed back, but why put it in for a reason then? Unless you put it in for a reason and it's escape free if you're, disgruntled. But I don't think any of these guys, are disgruntled.
No, certainly Sam Darnold wouldn't be. His career has been resurrected, and he's going to make a lot of money with somebody next year because he came to Minnesota last year and got coached by Kevin O'Connell and Josh McCown and all that crew, and had the year that he had. So,
Lone Wolf says Jones' void was pushed back. I'll have to look. I didn't I didn't see it reported anywhere.
Yep.
And Roger's saying the same thing. Well, good for Jones. That's one. We got 3 more. And And I think Murphy's is probably the most important of the bunch.
Yes, considering our cornerback situation, I would agree. You think that you'd think that for the Vikings with the I know that Murphy's get into this at cornerbacks. I know Murphy's price has gone way up with the year he had last year, but when you look at his age and the fact that the Vikings thought enough of him 2 years ago to sign him away from the Cardinals, that if he played so well last year, I think that they could see that he can, at his age, and he was a highly drafted player, when coming out of college, he was considered a very promising cornerback. That the Vikings, seeing the year he had last year, that he has finally reached the level that everybody thought he was going to reach maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, and so you'd want to keep up with that. And why, when you know what you have in the building, why let that go and sign somebody else that you didn't have in the building? And you might be a little older, might be a little bit more expensive. DJ Reed comes to mind, and then bring him in, and you don't get the same bang for the buck. Although if you could sign Murphy and DJ Reed, I'd be pretty happy about that.
Well, who knows? Like I said, I think our Vikings news is going to be quite eventful in the next 48 hours or so. But we'll find out. And that brings us to theme 3. Oop, wrong button. It'll work now. We have.
Oh, we're back from last week. Theme 4.
I got the tight ends on there and didn't need the tight ends because. Okay, let me. Boop, there we go. Tight ends.
Yes, sir. Rolling on again with our positional analysis of the Vikings, getting to the end of the offense. Next week will be offensive line, by the way, the big round bellies. But Dave will have lots to say about that. But yeah, tight ends. I said last week wide receiver was probably the easiest positional analysis I've done in a while. I think this one's even easier because I don't think there's going to be much change at all in the Vikings tight end room. Looking at first our number one guy, TJ Hockenson, locked in. I think in 2025 he should be completely fully healed from the ACL, MCL injury if he wasn't already in 2025, and that's going to be good for him, good for the Vikings. But I did talk a few weeks ago about how I felt that Hockenson, in 2024, when he got back into the lineup during the Colts game after missing the first 7 games, that he didn't have as big a prominent role in the Vikings offense as I thought he was going to have. And I think that that's due to change in 2025, though, because he is going to have the chance to work on a rapport and chemistry with whoever the Vikings quarterback is in 2025. And that's something he didn't get this last year with Sam Darnold. I think that's going to help. And the other reason why I think he's going to be in line for, I think, an improved, at least stats-wise, year in 2025 compared to last year is that, again, if J.J. McCarthy is the Vikings guy at quarterback, and both of us think that he will be and should be, he is going to be, as a rookie, learning the ropes, not a rookie, but as a second-year player, but a first-year starter, learning the ropes and learning the speed in the NFL game. I think you're going to see him, utilize and throw more in the short and intermediate areas of the field than Sam Darnold ever did. And if he does that, TJ Hockenson is going to be one of the prime targets and beneficiaries of that. The other thing being that with, J.J. McCarthy, also another reason why he might be more apt to go in the short and intermediate areas. I think that particularly will happen in the first half of the season or early in the season, because as a first-year starter, I'm sure Kevin O'Connell will be trying to slow the game down and simplifying the game for him. So the play calling might change, and the type of routes that he's asking everybody to run might change a little bit. There might not be as much calls for the deep looks. Also, McCarthy won't be looking for the deep shots as much. again, as he's getting used to the NFL speed of the NFL game, and maybe, and so I think that TJ Hockenson is going to be, again, a guy he's going to look for a lot in those situations in the short to intermediate area. And so that's going to mean TJ Hockenson is going to have I think, a bigger role in the offense this year than he did last year. And hopefully the Vikings and Kevin O'Connell will also figure out a way to make him have more of an impact in the red zone and be more of a threat in the end zone and actually catch a few touchdown passes, which he did not have last year in the regular season. So that's why I think TJ Hockenson could be in line for a stats bump in 2025. And no worries about him. We know what he can do. We know he's an excellent player and one of the best pass catching tight ends in the NFL. We're happy to have him, even at the price that we've got him for. I think the number 2 tight end for us, Josh Oliver, he's in a bit of, I think, a delicate situation contract-wise, because he's coming into a final year of the 3-year, $20 million deal that he signed in 2023. But and he's coming off a year where he set career highs in touchdown catches, in receiving yardage, tied a career high in receptions. The thing is that the career highs, the stat jump was modest, right? Like he increased a little bit in yardage and one more touchdown pass than he had in the past as a career high. But, he's set to count, I think, 9.4 on the salary cap next year. That seems to me to be quite a bit for a guy who didn't play 50%, just under 50% of the offensive snaps last year for the Vikings. Now, the thing is, though, that he's a hell of a blocker. The Vikings often, not only run blocking, but pass blocking. They often have him taking edge rushers and linebackers one-on-one, sometimes even defensive linemen, and he holds up pretty well on those. He rarely loses badly on those matchups. The Vikings don't have anybody on their roster who can do that at the tight end position like Oliver. So, if you were to over the cap, actually had an article where they listed a whole bunch of NFL players that they think could likely be salary cap casualties, and Oliver was the guy that they highlighted on the Vikings. Now, there was a bunch of financial reasons for that, but perhaps slight restructure might be in order for Oliver, but I don't see him going anywhere and getting released this year, because again, he would leave a big hole on the Vikings tight end room. They don't have anybody who can block like he can. And we saw against Los Angeles and against Detroit at the end of the year how much we need good blockers, whether they're tight ends, offensive linemen, or running backs or whatever. So he's going to stick around. What about the best number 3 tight end in the NFL, Dave? What are we going to do about Johnny Munt? Well,
he's a free agent this year.
He is a free agent right now. But I feel that somehow that I've been trying to get rid of Munt, or hoping the Vikings would get rid of Munt, since 2022. It hadn't happened yet. Is this the year that it happens, that I get my wish? I don't know about that, Dave, because there's a few reasons for that. One is that the role that Munt has, I think that he knows what his role is, and that's number 3 tight end who's not going to play much unless one of the number 2 or number 1 or number 2 tight end gets hurt. And I think that at this stage in his career, he's almost 31, that he's okay with that. And he's accepting of that. Those players are not always easy to find, know their role and accept their role. The other thing is that because of the role that he has, he's cheap. He cost $2 million against the salary cap last year for the Vikings. If he were to be re-signed by the Vikings or get signed by anybody else, I don't think he's making any more than that. If he does, it'll be very little. So that's another reason why I think that he'd appeal to the Vikings. The third reason is that, for whatever reason, Kevin O'Connell loves him. And sometimes coaches have their guys. And Johnny Munt seems to be one of those guys. So those are 3 reasons why I think that Johnny Munt will be back in 2025, even though I would prefer if the Vikings brought in somebody who was younger, had more upside. Nick Muse, I thought potentially could be that, but then he got released near the end of the year, got signed by the Eagles on their practice squad, and now he's can say he was part of a Super Bowl winning team. I don't think he signed a reserve futures contract with the Eagles, though, so he is also a free agent at this point. But with the Vikings bring him back after they released him last year, and they don't seem to really have a role and trust him to be the number 3 guy, I don't know. I guess it's possible, but I don't see him being back either. That doesn't mean, though, that I wouldn't like them to explore finding a younger person, a tight end with upside, to replace Johnny Munt. And somebody that I think the Vikings I would like them to look at would be Harrison Bryant. Last year, who was Harrison Bryant? Well, last year he played for the Las Vegas Raiders. Didn't have a very good season. He got stuck behind Brock Bowers, the wunderkind tight end from Georgia, and Michael Mayer there, who was from they drafted out of Notre Dame the year before, was also there. So Bryant didn't have a role on the Raiders, and he only caught 9 passes, and he only played about 19% of the offensive snaps. But he is why I think that he would be a good target for the Vikings is to bring in as a number 3 guy is that he's only 27, and he's coming out of college, Dave. He was pretty highly rated. NFL.com's Lance Zierlein comped him to George Kittle. He was also he was an All-American in 2022, his final season at Florida International, I think. And he was the John Mackey Award winner, best tight end in the country. And so he hasn't come anywhere close to, living up to that, but he did have 31 catches in Cleveland at that time. I think that he would be interested at this point in his career, at going somewhere where to a team that's won and also has a pretty good locker room culture, and where the number 3 and even the number 2 tight end situation is, there's some opportunity there. And he's a guy that's young and has upside. And the other thing that could make him a potential Vikings target is that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah was part of the Browns front office that drafted him in 2020. So Kwesi Adofo-Mensah knows Harrison Bryant's potential. He saw him in the Browns building in 2020 when he worked there, and he's got a history with him, and so he knows his potential. And also, I'm sure he's followed his career and seen what's happened to him in his 3 years in Cleveland and his 1 year in Las Vegas. So, again, I don't think that Johnny Munt is even though he's a free agent now, I can see the Vikings bringing him back, and I expect them to. But if they aren't, I think Harrison Bryant is a guy that would be worth kicking the tires on because there's upside there. He's young. He's been more productive in his young career than Munt has been in kind of similar roles. And again, in college, he was one of the best tight ends in the nation. If TJ Hockenson or Josh Oliver gets hurt, with Johnny Munt, you know what you got, and there isn't much there. With Harrison Bryant, again, the upside is, I think, way more than Johnny Munt. Again, younger, and you probably could get him at pretty much the same price. So again, somebody that I think the Vikings should look at as bringing in to be potentially the number 3 tight end for the Vikings. But again, I feel that right now where things sit, that the Vikings tight end room is going to look pretty similar to what it was in 2024, with Hockenson and Oliver back, of course, and then Muntcake also being back as the best number 3 tight end in the NFL.
Could be. I do like the idea of Bryant. We've all heard the saying, I've said it probably 100 times. You tend to draft a tight end for their next team. It takes that long to become a quality tight end in the NFL. The last thing we're going to look at is top tight end draft prospects. I liked Elijah Arroyo out of the University of Miami, but going with Bryant is going to give you a better opportunity than with our limited 4 draft picks taking one on a tight end. It's just going to be. But I wanted to include the draft prospects up there. Don't get your hopes up. None of them probably are going to be real good real early. So that's why I think Bryant's the way to go. I think it's one of those positions that you look for somebody else to develop, get tired of, and then bring over and polish.
And when you're in free agency, Dave, when in this sort of situation, you've got to, for a number 3 tight end, you've got to look for a player who's actually willing to take that role as well. And if you look at the tight ends who are slated to become free agents right now, there's a lot of them that are really, really old, and I don't think the Vikings would have any interest in. And there's other guys that wouldn't have any interest in being the number 3 tight end, maybe for the Vikings. Bryant is a guy who I think would be, because I don't think he's going to have a tremendous amount of, nobody's going to be saying, we want you to be the number 1 tight end in our place. I think he's going to get similar offers everywhere to be a depth guy. And so if you're going to get those kind of offers, would you rather go to a shit team as a depth guy or a team that could be really, really good as a depth guy? Yeah, which is why I think the Vikings would be attractive to him. And we already talked about why I think Bryant would be attractive to the Vikings. As far as draft goes, I think, Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl, look at the rosters of the tight ends that were there and look at the ones that you think would be our day 3 or UDFAs in scouting reports. And those are the guys the Vikings might sign after the draft is over. But I don't think they're going to draft a tight end either. Certainly not with 4 picks going in. All of those are going to either running back, interior offensive line, defensive back, or interior defensive. Yeah, corners. They're not going to be drafting a tight end.
Yep. I agree with you 100%. So, well, that concludes today's show. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Biggs, Drew, John, George. God, you guys rock. Raymond, everybody that's been here, T-Bass. And we'll see how it goes this week. Like I said, keep an eye out on the news. I suspect we'll get news over the next 48 hours about the free agents being pushed out, negotiating the window, like supposedly Aaron Jones already has. We'll see if it happens with Byron Murphy and, of course, Mr. Darnold. Any last words there, buddy?
We didn't even talk about Aaron Rodgers coming to the Vikings, Dave. That's because he ain't.
Yes.
That's it. I just had to get that big in.
That's part of, when we talk about, the Vikings are going to keep Darnold. Where are we getting that from? The national media. The national media is the same one pushing Aaron Rodgers to us. No. Sorry.
Yeah. Makes no sense.
None. Anyways.
I know. Yeah.
But
2009, we brought in Frabshore, but we had our other option was Tavares Jackson. Our option this time around is J.J. McCarthy. Big difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
And so there it is. What do we say?
We say, SKOL Vikings, baby.
SKOL
And thanks for
Vikings. Watching. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcast as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!